All right, good evening. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Village of Vernon Hills, and we need to begin with a roll call.
Commissioner Cotton.
Here.
Commissioner Fluno.
Here.
Commissioner Heidner.
Here.
Commissioner Leese.
Here.
Commissioner Nevitt.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
And Chairman Morris.
Here. Okay, this evening, first, our general public comments. If anyone wants to address the commission on something of a general nature. All right, seeing no great rush to the podium to do so. We have one item for review this evening, public hearing in case number 2024-02, a petition filed by Centennial Real Estate, the property owner, requesting amendments to ordinance 2013-013 and 2013-014, which have been previously amended to revise the Hawthorne Mall PUD to facilitate the construction of a restaurant with outdoor dining on an outlot commonly known as 950 North Milwaukee Avenue. It is zoned B1 General Business District, but part of the Hawthorne Mall PUD. Who is going to speak this evening on behalf of the petitioner? And are the other people with you for moral support, or are they going to speak also?
They'll be speaking also.
Okay, why don't we have everybody come up, identify yourself, and then we'll swear everybody in at once. So, tell us who's who.
Good evening, Commissioners. Appreciate your time tonight. My name is Sam Whitebread. I'm the Vice President of Development for Centennial Real Estate. We are the owner-operator of the Hawthorne campus. And obviously tonight we're here with our friends and partners at Yard House and representation from our civil engineering team as well.
Okay.
Brian Martin, Site Civil Engineer with Kimley Horn, here on behalf of Centennial.
Joe Mayer, Site Civil Engineer with Kimley Horn, here on behalf of Darden Yard House.
Katie Peel with Site Enhancement Services, here on behalf of Darden Yard House and their signage request.
Okay. Okay, we'd ask you all to raise your right hand and swear or affirm that this testimony you're about to give before this commission of the Village of Vernon Hills shall be the truth.
Do.
Okay. The primary rule is that you need to speak either from the stationary microphones or there are handheld microphones on the podium as well. Okay? Before we let you speak, however, we're going to let Mr. Jennings specifically tell us some changes that we're looking at in our packets that have been amended since we were provided them late last week.
So by way of introduction, just to start it off, the petitioner originally presented this concept plan to the Committee of the Whole in September. They've been working with us, the staff of the Public Works Department and myself, and the outside reviewers on the technical review since that point. They did two full rounds of technical review and then some odds and ends related to this submittal. The general review by the Committee of the Whole was positive. There were some requests by the committee to pay attention to the visual character of the southwest corner, which is an interior corner facing the Hawthorne Road development, as well as the southeast corner, the entrance opposite Melody Farm. So in their presentation tonight, I'm sure they'll be addressing that. During the technical review, a lot of our time was spent on the impacts on this site from the grading. There's a grade change, a significant grade change from Mall Drive down to the Milwaukee Avenue sidewalk. So they sort of stepped down across that area. So a lot of our time and technical was spent on that. And as you can see from the staff report, there are a few details that you would normally see at the time of final landscape and final site plan that we didn't have. The petitioners have addressed that by submitting a landscape palette to show the plants that would be selected from plants such as these or similar, subject to the final review of the village engineer. So the idea would be to be complementary to the Perry Steakhouse plant palette to the north. Technically what is being asked of the commission is to review an amendment to the Hawthorne Mall PUD. We have been amending and re-amending the 2013 version of the PUD. So the Perry Steakhouse, for example, the actual instrument of approval in that case was similar to this. It was an amendment to the two ordinances that make up the Hawthorne Mall PUD as amended now. So that is mechanically what is happening. That amendment consists of amendments to the plan set, which would be the site plan, landscape plan, et cetera, and all the supporting engineering documents. as well as an update to the other ordinance associated with the PUD, which is the list of variations from the building code, sign code, and zoning code that are associated with the PUD. So each element of this project kind of keeps adding to the story of this very large PUD document that we have. So that is what they are proposing. The packet that you have in front of you, the supplemental packet, is an updated motion. I have added the landscape palette to the draft motion for the plan set. That's the first motion. And then I've adjusted the the sign code variation motion to reflect more accurately the dimensions that are shown on the revised sign pack, the full detailed sign package that we received yesterday. So with that, I'd like to have the petitioner come up and give you an overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions throughout.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Jennings. Thanks again, Director Jennings, for collaboration to date. As Director Jennings mentioned, we've gone through two rounds of TRC review. The site was reviewed with the Committee of the Whole on a concept level. So we've started to work out some of the details and are feeling good about where we are with staff currently, and happy to talk some more of those details here as well. So our team has introduced themselves, so I'll move forward. Just to give a little bit of site context as to where the Yard House site is proposed in relation to the rest of Hawthorne Mall. You've probably seen this slide in other formats. Every time we come back, it's a little bit fuller. You can see that blue polygon on the right side along Milwaukee. To the west of us is Phase 1. To the north of us is currently a vacant parcel, but to the very far north of us is Perry's Steakhouse, which is currently under construction. So there are 3 lots associated with the with the Milwaukee outlot subdivision. The northernmost being Perry's. The central, this is a concept plan of kind of a master of what this could look like. That central piece is still in the works. So what you see here is just conceptual at this point, or not even conceptual. It's just a drawing for reference. And the southern is Yard House, which we'll be talking about in more detail here. Thought this slide was relevant to show how, you have a puzzle piece to the north and a puzzle piece to the south, and how do those interconnect. So those plans are being considered as we move forward. Zooming in on the 2-acre site, approximately 2-acre site, on the west side of Milwaukee Avenue, as we mentioned, the Phase 1 multifamily development is directly to the west of us on the other side of the Mall Drive on the west. The access road to the south of us connects us to Melody Farms, and then to the north is that vacant parcel as previously mentioned. So the building's located at the southeast corner. There's an outdoor patio space, dining space that Joe with Yard House will speak more on. To the west of that is a green space that transitions Yard House to the rest of the mall, so they all feel like they're interconnected. Transitions us to Hawthorne Row. To the north, we have surface parking that is situated in the most efficient layout we could come up with here. That we're happy to speak more on the site plan if there are additional questions. Our landscape plan, we have parkway landscaping, parking island landscaping, foundational landscaping around the building, turf in that sod green in that green space to the west, and then plantings meeting the code standards. I know that there were some questions about the preliminary nature of what was reviewed in TRC, so we've prepared a few landscape palettes here that Andrew mentioned in terms of what will be selected as part of the final design. I will also let you know that that final design, at least the first iteration of it, was completed today and it can be available as early as tomorrow to staff to review in more detail. We're happy to speak more on the landscape plan on some of the constraints we have with grading utilities. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Joe to speak more on the architecture and the building itself.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, as shown on this slide is the relatively typical floor plan for Yard House. And to orient yourself, the top of the page would be the north or the main entrance into the parking lot. From there, you enter into the main dining area with the bar in the middle, with the back of house and service on the east side, Milwaukee, and the seasonal patio, as well as the outdoor dining on the west side towards Hawthorne Row. Yard House is an established brand for Darden, amongst others. There's a couple in the Chicagoland area. For example, there's one in Glenview, one in Lombard, to name a few. So coming here to Hawthorne Mall, they wanted to make sure that they adapted their brand to be consistent and cohesive with the rest of the mall development. So some of the materials, which I can pass out the board here, if the commissioners would like to see. So between the color scheme and the different materials, they've tried their best to, like I said, be consistent and cohesive with the rest of the project or property, primarily consisting of the thin brick, shades of red and shades of white, hardy plank, and some ephes as accent materials. So what you're looking at right now is the north elevation, or what would face the parking lot on the north side, with the tower element at what would be the northwest corner. And I'll breeze through the elevations, but I'm happy to discuss them more if there's any questions after our presentation. This is the east elevation that faces Milwaukee. There is a service corridor in this area, but will be well screened with landscaping. There's also a stepping element that comes as you come off of Milwaukee, where the service yard is set lower than the rest of the building, and the tower element steps further back. This is the south elevation that faces the entrance drive. Like I said, similar materials. There truly is some four-sided architecture here. There is no primary entrance on this side. And as we flip to the west side, this is the portion of the building that's going to integrate with Hawthorne Row. There's the lawn element and the seasonal patio.
Okay.
The material board's being passed around, but there is some representation here as well. With that, I would like to invite Katie up. She can speak a little bit more to signage. I know there may be some specific questions on that, so I'll flip forward. We do have some extra material in our presentation in the event that there's questions on some of the details.
Thank you. So as Joe mentioned, we are requesting to keep consistent with Yard House's very much established brand. Prototypical branding for them is signage on all four elevations. With this being an out parcel building, they do have very high visibility to all four elevations, so we'd like to stay consistent with that if possible. One of the main signs that we are requesting a variation for is the sign on the north elevation. We do feel this sign is necessary as it does face the parking lot. It also will indicate the front door for patrons as they are coming in. No issues with the sign that faces Milwaukee. On this west elevation, we are requesting a variation to increase signage allowances for the taglines that are on this bump out feature that does face the outside dining. We believe this is necessary as it does help reinforce that brand. Although Yard House is a very established brand, it's one of the more unique brands that Darden does have. So they are very far and few in between, and so just to help them kind of be more established in this area, help patrons know exactly what they are going to be able to experience. We feel like this adds to the atmosphere of that outdoor dining, as well as just add more brand visibility. And then the last sign that we were asking a variation for is the monument sign. Although it does not face a direct public access, we do feel like it is helpful in identifying the location of the property. It helps also identify that it is an out parcel, it is not an inline tenant, it has its own separate parking, and it is consistent, as staff has noted in the report, with other requests such as Perry's and Wild Fork. And I think that is it, unless there are questions. I think as a group, we'd like to thank staff for their time, as well as you all here. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Okay. Any questions, anyone?
Yes, I noticed that some of these signs, this is all on signage, so. I noticed that on all of the signs, you have the taglines in the oval.
Correct.
And I Googled yard house signs, and some locations don't have it on every elevation. They just have yard house.
Correct.
If you're gonna have the tagline on the oval sign, I don't see the necessity to have, great food, classic rock, and world's largest selection of draft beer on the facade as well.
On the same facade?
To me, that's a second sign, and I don't think it's necessary.
So there's definitely an option to change that oval sign to more of the channel letter set by itself. That's definitely an option, something that Yard House has done in the past. Although it is in the same elevation, they are in different kind of viewing planes, especially when you're down in that viewing area. And so I think the intention here is, again, just to add more to the atmosphere, more of the environment for that outdoor seating area. It's super small. It's not illuminated lettering. It's not super like in your face, so it's really just minimal for more of the close-knit group that will be around that area. But if that's something that you wanted to explore, we can put exhibits together and show the channel letters there instead.
See, and I would rather just have the oval sign, as shown, because I still feel that it's a second sign on the same elevation.
Of course.
The monument sign away from the building, if you have signage on all 4 elevations, why do you feel you need the monument sign, basically taking up another parking spot?
Right, so it is in a landscaping island that I believe is being built in, so hopefully we're not taking away from too much parking. We do feel it is necessary to add for this advance notice for motorists heading south on Milwaukee. Again, we don't have a direct access, so it's more of a heads up, hey, to get into the right lane, to get to the right side, to exit to that main entrance that's right there, before seeing the building in case it is blocked by trees or by other buildings that may come before it.
Anybody else?
The location of the monument sign, can you, it's hard to see.
Is it possible to zoom in on?
But basically, my question is it where you turn in to the parking area?
No, thank you.
Oh, I'm
Actually, that
hoping
one's
it is.
better.
It's not.
No?
It is not. So there is going to be, to my knowledge, there's going to be a larger shared sign for the entire mall that will go there. So we didn't want to make that area too convoluted. Yep, so it's going to be up in that parking space there instead of on the corner. You can actually see in the
The red's pointing to it.
in this bottom corner here, you can see where the shared sign is planned to go.
Okay,
So we didn't want to have too many things in there, plus with easements and all of that.
okay. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
You don't feel that a driver coming southbound will see the signage on the building before they see the monument sign?
Just with the position of where this is located, the fact that the front entrance sign is all the way over here, more likely they're going to hit that monument sign first before they hit the wall sign further in.
So you're thinking they'll like miss the turn?
Just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, most people use GPS nowadays, but GPS really just gets you to a general area where signage usually has a benefit of directing you to an exact location. So we're hoping this just add a benefit just for people's safety as they're traveling.
Thank you.
What's the elevation of that sign compared to Milwaukee?
In terms of grading,
That sign's approximately 3 feet above
Okay.
the sidewalk.
So go back to where you were. You didn't
Am
give
I going the wrong way?
us actual landscape plans, but aren't you putting landscaping along the Milwaukee to hide the parking lot? And if it's only 3 feet, unless you have landscaping that's going to be a foot, that's almost going to be useless, you're not going to see the sign from Milwaukee. It's going to be blocked. So why do you need it?
there's also an additional 3-foot base that can kind of take into account that landscaping as well before the cabinet of the monument shows.
Okay, so let's pretend that you've gotten further in landscaping. What's going to go along Milwaukee?
Yeah, there will be shrubs along Milwaukee.
Like, how big?
They could get up to 4 feet at maturity.
So you're basically blocking most of the sign. So,
I don't, yeah.
so how's it going to work? It's not going to achieve the goal that you're suggesting you want. And the only way to achieve it is to stop the landscaping, which is a bad goal, because then you're going to have the headlight wash from the parking lot at night onto a busy state highway. So how does it all work together?
I mean, maintenance can come in and keep it trimmed to where it's at that baseline from where I'm going the wrong direction.
Yeah, and
100% wrong
I
direction,
think
hang on.
the 4-foot shrubs will not, we can consider having a different, something different in front of the monument sign. The monument sign's 8 feet tall and it's 3 feet above the sidewalk. So the height of the shrubs will only be covering potentially that brick element to it. So I believe there's still visibility of the actual sign itself.
You also have parking spaces on either side, so let's say an SUV wanted to back into that stall, wouldn't that block
Yeah.
most of that sign?
Oh, on the north side for the southbound view? Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So this parking stall is directly north of the sign. If someone parks there, is it limiting visibility is the question?
It would be a temporary block at that time.
But that's inconsistent with the stated objective. And so what we're trying to do is reconcile how the stated objective works with both the parking lot and also works with the screening that's necessary for the headlight sweep to go across Milwaukee, especially in Chicago, unfortunately, a lot of the year when it's dark. So how do you propose to get it to all work?
For the monument sign in particular, we'll have to consider how we do the landscaping there. If there's potential to increase the size of that landscape island, we'll look into that without the loss of parking. We don't want to lose any parking stalls, but if there's potential to make some shifts to increase the width of that parking, of the space that the monument sign resides in, we can consider that as well.
There also appears to be a retaining wall in that area. Do you have any type of cross-section showing the grade change from the parking lot down to Milwaukee?
The retaining wall, and working with staff, has been removed. We've been looking at it pretty closely, and found that we can have a solution that the site, and Director Jennings referenced this, is pretty steep from west to east. It's for the width of the site has been difficult from a grading standpoint, unless you want to feel like you're going down a ski slope as you drive towards, and then just ADA accessibility makes things even harder. So the wall was initially there to keep the parking lot as flat as possible, and then just make up the grade in that small space between the back of the curb and the sidewalk. I think we found a compromise of having a finished edge in the back of that curb that's 9 inches as opposed to a 2-foot, 3-foot wall, and then a little bit of a steeper transition from the back of the curb to the sidewalk that will be planted with those shrubs that will kind of cover up the curb line, and provide some stabilization of that curb. So that retaining wall has been eliminated, and that's been shared with staff.
Will that planting bed be able to hold mulch soil without getting washed out during a
It
rainstorm?
will, because the system that we're planning on using with the plantings is intended to stabilize that soil. And there won't be very much drainage at all coming at it. Any drainage going from west to east will be captured in the curb line. So the only rainfall that's going to be hitting it is what's directly falling on top of that 6-foot wide swath.
If I could just interject from we don't have the benefit of having Public Works here to give their 2 cents on this, but this is one of the issues that we, as a whole, the staff was sort of struggling with throughout the technical review. It was part of the first technical review and the second technical review, and even as of today, we're still working with them on this. So the latest from Public Works is that the village we do have a few routes where we take care of sidewalk snow clearing. Putting a wall in close proximity to a sidewalk really complicates that. So we're trying to avoid having a wall. There's a limited wall area as it is right now near the existing monument sign for the mall, and we're trying to avoid having additional wall. So the balance here is trying to find something like this, the 9-inch exposed space in the back of the curb, and then what the space that you're left with, what kind of slope is that, and what kind of plants will actually hold that slope intact without creating another maintenance problem for them. So as it is right now, it seems like everybody's close, but that's one of the reasons the condition is worded the way that it is.
Yeah, my concern would be, obviously, we're trying to get height in the plant material to block out the headlights of the vehicles, but we're also dropping down from the curbing, is my understanding, so.
Yeah, and the way that the Perrys dealt with, the Perrys had a similar issue. They didn't have the grade, but it had the limited space. And the way the Perry's landscape plan dealt with that was to leave decorative grasses up through the winter so that they wouldn't be cut down until the spring. So you get better coverage that way. But again, the Public Works isn't here to give more detail, but that's the gist of it from the last time I talked to them.
Does the Perry's have a monument sign separate from the building?
It's pretty similar to this.
So I have a question on the parking. The way the site layout is, you have 131 spots, which is less than required. And then it's overflow parking will park elsewhere within the development itself. Right now, the way the parking lot layout is, there's a single entrance and exit close to the entry to the building itself. So has there been any consideration, obviously you're gonna have to direct people to park elsewhere. Has there been a thought to connect the parking lot, at least to Perry's, so you have a dual in and out of this sign, at least on a temporary basis until the middle development is put in place and you're able to connect the facilities? Because it looks really congested there if you think families coming in, people backing up, maybe a person using the handicap, that's a lot of congestion in a small area. And I realize it's not happening all the time, but during the peak hour, you would imagine it would be much more congestion, especially if the lot's full. You can't necessarily tell. And so you would have people circulating within. Because there is a pretty big difference. I think, 210 was the number for required, and we're at 130.
Versus the PUD required.
Yeah, so
right.
that's a pretty substantial difference.
In the interim condition, to answer the first part of that, we haven't considered connecting the north and the south through the middle. I know that there's been discussions about that middle parcel not being too far away. I know that there's interest in it, and I'm not sure what Sam is willing to share, but I know that there is interest in that. If it sits vacant, I believe that there would absolutely be considerations to, and what's not really shown here is there's an access point basically right here currently. This is a proposed, so we would revise this curb line to create this entrance. Right now, there's an access point almost right here, so it wouldn't be very difficult to create a temporary condition that funnels cars back to the main drive, and they could make that trip to the north. Yeah, in terms of the parking requirement comment, we are meeting the minimum of the PUD. I do know that there are parking garages and other facilities throughout the Hawthorne Mall that could be utilized. Additionally, I believe there's considerations for a lot of foot traffic from Phase 1 multifamily building as well, as far as utilizing that they wouldn't require a car in that parking lot. So I think there's the PUD number is probably reduced as a result of there being more pedestrian connectivity between things.
Sure. So I guess, with the difference, how would you intend to direct vehicles? I mean, you're going to be a popular brand. You're going to have a lot of people. How are you going to convey to people, hey, there's parking over here or parking over there? I mean, what's the thought with signage within the parking lot itself, or how is that going to be addressed?
In terms of overflow,
just to direct people, when you're full.
Those are details that we can certainly talk to with Darden as we move forward. As of right now, overflow parking signage hasn't been considered as part of the signs, but we haven't gotten to the point of showing full. We have fire lane signage, but I think there are some details that still need to be worked out in terms of getting this to a permit that could consider how we direct overflow parking. The site, without having that interim potential connection on the north side, it has one access in and one access out, to your point. So considerations for how you direct folks is something that we can actually absolutely consider and work with staff to make sure we're doing what's appropriate.
And lastly, kind of on the parking lot theme, I get it, you're gonna have people park elsewhere. You're looking for foot traffic, right?
Yeah.
It seems like you would, I know it doesn't show on the plans and it's probably outside of your scope, but, pedestrian crossing that roadway should, on the west side, north-south, how do you, some way of addressing how you're gonna corral the passengers so you don't get like 50 people crossing wherever. Maybe say at the end of the night, 50 people crossing across the street, wherever to get to their vehicles across the way. I think there needs to be a concerted plan to understand how the different modes are gonna interact with the building and the layout itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we can absolutely work with staff on.
So have you considered the possibility of having your staff parking elsewhere? Or, because that's something that would be, your patrons are most important, you know that. And you don't want somebody, because they have to walk too far, not to go there. So have you considered, if parking does become an issue, which hopefully it will, that, your staff would be parking, much further away or off-site somewhere?
Just from a property management perspective, there is always that option to look at that down the road when we do realize full potential of the site. But currently, as it stands, we've tried to keep each site self-contained within the allowances of the PUD. But Commissioner Smith, very good point that this doesn't function in unison until all three parcels are up and running. So there will be a short period of time where it's slightly pained until we realize the cross-parking easements that each one of these operators and us as the property owner have imagined. So we will work to solve for that. We do have, well, I guess perhaps it's shown somewhat here. We have a very large site up to the north and east here, which is unoccupied and largely unused, several hundred spots up there, which could always serve as temporary relief when needed, whether it's valet operations, employee operations, et cetera. And then regarding just other circulation and pedestrian access, this roadway illustrates the entrance to the parking deck, which is part of the Hawthorne Row Phase 1 project, and there's 100 spaces reserved there, as well as a few dozen parallel spots along Hawthorne Row. But enhance connectivity with a pedestrian crosswalk that's upscaled, highly visible, and promotes cross-pedestrian traffic is something that Darden envisioned, as well as us, early on, and that's something that's important to us.
And while you're up here, where is the snow storage going to be? Because there's not going to be a lot of areas here, and with the plantings, you don't want them to be near the plantings either, the snow storage and the salt near the plantings. So where is the snow storage going to be?
There are moments of time and moments in the year, if we ever receive those, winter of 78 snowfall amounts, where we would be exporting and shuttling snow around the site perhaps as we continue to densify. And from an operational perspective, that's something that we will assume the responsibility for. Parking is always number one, and it's number one to us as the owner-operator of the facility, but also to our retail and food and beverage partners. So pushing snow and covering up and losing half of your capacity would be unacceptable to all parties. Yeah.
Just two quick staff notes on the last few comments. Since the petitioner in this case is actually the owner of the property on behalf of the future occupant, we do have some flexibility to discuss directly the conditions of approval related to signage, directing people to the overflow parking. We've been working, the staff works pretty regularly with the mall on overall campus planning issues, and just in the last few weeks, we did receive a overall campus pedestrian route plan. So that's something that we've been working with them on. And so this site does appear on that. There are additional crosswalks considered here and at other outlot locations. So it's something that's definitely on our radar, and we're going to continue to work with them, regardless of this particular site. We are going to continue to work with them on overall, you have people living here now. We need to make sure that there's good pedestrian access. Just to clarify, on the parking analysis in the staff report, my point in this was that the original flat 4.6 ratio, probably came into play in the PUD at a time where there weren't any residents, there weren't outlots considered. The parking fields themselves were shared by users who were obviously not all operating at peak times. So my point in putting that in the staff report is just to consider distribution of parking, not just the flat ratio. So it's not to say that they necessarily should be held to the standalone building standard that would be in the code outside of the PUD, but just to consider that where the parking is located within the PUD does matter, and making sure that people can get from one place to another does matter.
So is it then staff's opinion that the parking they're providing is sufficient?
I do believe it's sufficient. My concern is that if they're at peak operating time and they do have an overflow, how would somebody know how to get to the parking lot and then how to get back to the restaurant? So having signage pointing both directions. From the vehicle perspective, additional parking available in the garage, that the garage signage be very obvious. And then as you exit the garage, you're sometimes disoriented because you're inside a building, you can't see out. How do you point people back out? So I think there's a certain common sense element to it that I'm comfortable working with them on.
So are the 3 outlots in Phase 1 under common ownership?
Yes, they will ultimately be platted and pinned separately, but they are all the same ownership.
Once they're platted and pinned separately, there's nothing prohibiting them from not being under common ownership. And you can't have an easement with yourself. So how do you protect the future users if you sell off parts of this?
There are mechanisms built into these leases that each one of the operators have insisted on, that they're perpetual easements that would survive any transfer of ownership with certainty.
Okay. How large are the spaces width-wise?
The parking stalls themselves?
Width is 9 feet wide.
Which is this current throughout the village space width? Okay. For the record, I'll tell you, I know that's the code, but I still think it's grossly inadequate looking at today's cars, especially with 90-degree parking. Okay, you will never get SUVs in there in the space. So I think your 131 is very optimistic. But what I'm most concerned about is, this is the suburbs. And it seems awfully aspirational what we're talking about, that people are going to go to what is not a fine dining restaurant, but it's more of a casual restaurant, and either valet or go look. And we only have to look across the street at Hawthorne, at Melody Farm, that there's Lazy Dog. There's an apartment building next to it. Find a person walking. There's really not people walking. So I like the aspiration, but I'm not sure 131 is going to work with this. And I don't believe, and I don't like overparking. But on the other hand, underparking bothers me a lot too. And I'm sure this is going to be very successful, if only based upon your other locations that I've been to. So I don't know what the answer is, but I don't see personally this working, because this isn't downtown Arlington Heights where people park in a lot and walk in an urban area. It's still, we're in the suburbs.
Can you maybe discuss your other locations and what parking they have compared to their capacity?
I'd be glad to let Yard House speak to that. Just one thing to add to the conversation that might be complementary to the points being made. The center parcel right now, although it is not an executed lease, we are in well past LOI stage, moving into leases with an operator. There's a breakfast brunch concept. So obviously their peak hours are opposite that of which the nighttime uses would be, which would be helpful to the overall
Yeah,
the
that would.
disposed stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just address, personally, I've been involved with one other Yard House project in the area, which is the Fountain Square development of Lombard, and it's a similar situation where it's there are shared agreements with other adjacent property owners, similar to this situation where their overflow parking would happen off-site, but generally on their lot, they're in the 150 range in, plus or minus 10% of what's shown on here.
Is
And
Lombard
how about
really
their
similar?
capacity?
Yeah, is Lombard really similar?
In what way? Sorry.
That you have to go across the street into a parking structure to find it?
Oh.
Isn't it, it's all surface parking, and it's line of sight, right? There are parking fields all around it.
Correct.
Yeah,
But
so it's really not similar.
Yeah, I was more referring to the lot directly to the north when that's constructed in the final condition.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Can I ask my panel here is, how many spaces does Lazy Dog have and the restaurants there?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't know,
An educated guess?
more than 10?
I don't want to wing it.
Not enough.
No.
Well, a good example with Lazy Dog is there's that lot to the north that is, within 25 feet of the building? And how many people cross that little road to use it? Nobody.
Looks like Lazy Dog's about 180, 200.
Is it? I don't know.
Think that many?
I was thinking like 50.
No,
like-
I think it's like maybe 150 or less, but it's definitely underparked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait, I have something that's
Oh,
not
I was just
working.
going to say, just so you know, we're very excited about you. But we're worried that you're going to have too much business.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I just wanted to also express my concern on the pedestrian. It looks like you have two walks headed to, I don't know if it's the ring road or whatever, but directing those pedestrians more towards the crosswalk instead of directly at the road would be a concern of mine. One looks like it's coming out of the beer garden, and then one's coming off the front of the building, but they're both going straight out as opposed to directing people towards the crosswalk. And with the open plaza area across the street, I feel like people are just going to be cutting across traffic.
Oh, got it. You're saying specifically on the west side of the property?
Correct.
Yeah, understood. On the south side, those are both service doors, and so I wanted to make sure that it was understood that those wouldn't be regularly used by patrons. But on the west side, I think we could look at the connectivity.
Do you need the walk coming from the beer garden going directly out, or could that come and hook into the main sidewalk coming off the front of the building?
I think there's an acknowledgement to when people come to that corner at the southwest part of the lot, there may be some desire to cut through the lawn and down, so wanting to provide at least a pedestrian path through there, so they're not having to go north towards the front and then over.
Is that envisioned as just all lawn, or could you have landscape beds that discourage and redirect the pedestrians in the right?
I think that's something we consider. I don't want to speak on behalf of the landlord team, but.
Yeah, well, to answer the question specifically, I think it's an area that's reserved for, perhaps we have, opportunities for seasonal uses or summer events out there in that area, and the lawn could be activated from time to time, and obviously with the special use permit and whatnot, but that's what it does aspire to be, more than just a lawn.
It's just right now, it just divides the space and just, I think it could
It's
be
really intended and
looked
kind of.
at a little closer.
Yeah, and what you're not quite seeing the full picture of here is opposite this, is the lawn that welcomes you as you enter the Hawthorne Row entrance. And this is meant to kind of bookend or add some symmetry and mimic that a little bit and carry on some of the consistent theme that was established with Hawthorne Row to help this out parcel feel connected to the rest of the project.
So in that case, that walk is directing you to basically cut right across the road instead of going to the crosswalk. That's my concern.
And noted, absolutely agree, yeah.
But operationally, is that walkway, can it be used? And you're walking into a beer garden, you're not walking, is there like a host or a hostess stand or something there? Or what really is it? Or is it an exit?
There would be a gate there to what is like a fenced and landscaped, service, outdoor dining area. And then there is entrance into the restaurant from that space. So,
All year?
no, not all year.
So actually, that was my question. As long as you are talking about the garden area or the outdoor dining, is that area completely enclosed? So, is there a fence throughout the whole area?
Yeah, so there's two, what we call the seasonal patio and the lawn. The seasonal patio is kind of like a three seasons room. There's probably not as much activity in the dead of winter. But then the lawn area is much more for the nicer months. It's completely outdoor. The boundary of the lawn area, I think we have some preliminary renderings of that, but it's intended to be screened with landscaping and some fencing, some ornamental fencing as the boundary to it, with some of the patio furniture out there.
And that's where the umbrellas are?
Correct.
Okay, because on the drawing or in the rendering, you can't tell that it's completely screened. You can see, or it's completely fenced in. So I just wanted to make sure, because it's necessary, I believe, if you want to serve alcohol out there.
Yeah, and then there's an acknowledgement to the proximity to the road and making sure that that space is contained.
Just the last comment on the entryway, you have two canopy trees on either side, and then on the south end, you've got two spaces that are marked non-handicap right at pretty much the radius return, right there. So you're gonna have cars that may have limited line of sight backing out into an entry drive. You may wanna, I get it, right? You gotta find as many spots as you can, so you're putting the spots there. But if you just look at what may be difficult operationally. Yeah, that tree and those two spots right there, and then a handicapped spot in near proximity. That just seems to want to drive that entrance north to just kind of clear up some of your, at least one row north to clear up somewhere right in front of your building.
You're saying that a potential solution is to just move the access drive up?
Yeah,
further
to
north?
line it up with the second row of parking, where you have that second row and north of there, and then I think it cleans up a lot of your entrance where it should
Yeah.
make things a little easier.
It's absolutely a consideration we can take a look at. I think one item that gives me a little bit of pause is the fire access lane.
Sure.
You see the dashed
Yep.
lines on both sides. So it's a conversation we would want to have with the fire department before making that adjustment, but we can absolutely take a look.
It just seems like a lot going on right there at
Yeah,
that one corner.
you're right.
Which is good.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm still confused about your entry from your sidewalk going out the west side. The one in the center of the beer garden.
This patio layout needs to be updated. There will not be a table with chairs here, but there is a gate.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's point number one.
Yeah.
So that is an entrance and an exit?
Yeah, operationally speaking, I don't know that I can speak to how they would manage that on a day-to-day basis, but, the original thought is it would be an entrance and an exit.
And is there one at it looked better on the
So
other diagram. On the south end, is there an exit or entrance there?
Yes. This one would be primarily just an exit. They're not directing traffic, or there wouldn't be signage to encourage an entry and exit here. Yeah, I think there's more of like a life safety plan, emergency
So
exits.
that's an emergency.
And you also have one going to the north.
Correct.
So you actually have three.
Correct.
Now, is the one going to the north an emergency exit too? Or just normal?
That's just normal.
So you're going to have people coming into your facility at 3 locations, potentially?
Yes. There's, this lawn area is an outdoor space, and so the entry, you can see this door here, is where people would be directed to come in and see staff, a hostess for, seating, and this is where the main entrance is of the building.
Where'd you get 4?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, but they're not coming, this is an emergency exit.
This door over here is a to-go door.
There's another one.
This is back of house, like to-go orders, with the to-go spots at the northeast corner here. These doors are all service only.
Did staff have sufficient time to review what they provided for landscape plans?
So the focus of the staff review really was the grading and dealing with the grading in the wall. The specifics on the landscape plan were provided recently. So I am comfortable with our landscape technician reviewing this, reviewing the palette, reviewing what's located where, what makes sense. But to answer your question, the landscape technician has not seen that yet, and my recommendation would be a condition of approval, which is fairly common, just to have the final review by the Public Works Department.
Does our technician, is he following a village code or guidelines as far as the amount of shrubs, evergreen, perennial, that sort of thing?
Yes, yeah, he is. I do know that, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen things that were built in, the 90s have been thinning out just because we probably overdid it in the 90s and early 2000s. So I think that there's a little more nuance to it now and trying to really understand that plants grow and taking that into account. Trees in particular, the density of tree planting, I think, has evolved in our code, in our standards.
I think perennials and grasses are very trendy and look nice, and I prefer them as well, but they do all get cut down in the spring and take a little bit of time, so there is that 6 to 8 week gap of basically almost nothing being there, so I want to make sure that there's enough mixture of evergreen shrubs and deciduous.
And you do have, just on a quick look at the palette, you've got some deciduous that have winter interest with the red twigs. So I think mixing in winter interest, things that aren't totally cut down, I think is a really good point to make. And I think to ensure that that gets passed on to the landscape technician, maybe updating the condition of approval to pay particular attention to not creating winter bald spots would be, I think that would be a good idea.
Is the, going back to the building, I'm looking at the north elevation, around the trash enclosure, is that, the sides of that, is that made to match the right, west end of the building? Is that, is right, look, no, I want to look at the north side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go. Yeah, the far right, is that made, or is the far left, is that made to match the far right? Is that the same material?
The material for the trash enclosure is different than the white brick veneer on the, what would be the west elevation.
So was that on your sample?
I believe so. But it's the fascia, it might be on the,
So was staff satisfied with the material being used there?
So during the concept review, actually prior to the first concept review, this was one of the staff concerns. With the material that they're showing, the unilock smooth for the wall, that is something that we don't have a concern with. That's an upgrade. It's not on the building, but it's certainly complementary to the building. The question that I still have that's remaining is what the exterior treatment of the walk-in refrigeration is. There's a note in the staff report that the materials in that space be kept below the height of the wall. The walk-ins are above the height of the wall, but I wasn't totally clear. If you go back to the east elevation, it wasn't totally clear to me what the exterior treatment of the walk-ins is. Is it a finished, are you gonna end up with the EFIS and then galvanized metal, and then, so how is that being handled?
I apologize, I don't have the answer, but I can certainly work with the Darden team to get staff a response.
So I think there might be a need for some kind of treatment on that, if that's not designed to be an exterior view. 4 or 5 feet above the height of the wall. I don't think increasing the height of the wall is probably, at least for that full area, is not a great idea. So I think getting some confirmation of how that would be treated would be needed. I can update the draft motion to address that.
In looking at the outer wall, just visually to me, it seems like it's missing a cap or some sort of shadow line at the top. I don't know how that all gets finished off.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and understand the comment of, yeah, not just a smooth finish, but an end cap on the top.
Dress it up a little
Yeah.
bit, and would we ever consider, or would you ever consider doing ivy or something else on that wall just to get more greenery and coverage?
I would say that would be atypical, just having from a maintenance perspective, having the growth on the building. But I think leaning more towards the separate foundation plantings, if there's a solution there, it may be more amenable to the rest of the architecture team.
You had a slide on line of sight for the mechanicals that you kind of whizzed by.
Yes, there's a couple slides here at the end of the presentation in case there was some discussion around it that I can get there. So these are a couple sections to orient yourself. The top section is if you're looking north at the building, so Milwaukee is on the right, Mall Drive is on the left, and then the second section is a north-south cut from the parking lot.
Except it doesn't have the trash enclosure, is that correct?
The top,
The bottom one?
the bottom one does not represent, it's a section through the middle of the building.
Right.
The top one does represent the trash enclosure.
Could you just go back real quick to the plan view that shows the section cuts?
Yes.
Just to make sure we're in myself. And we're looking at 1 and 2, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a parking question. What are your thoughts on the pedestrian safety for people that are parking in the back rows? Because typically, parking lots are designed to have their rows perpendicular to the building. So people who parked in the back rows are going to be cutting through.
Correct,
And even to get to the sidewalk to get in, they have to cut through the handicap, or
correct.
it's really not a safe pass.
The orientation of the parking is a result of the size and shape of the building and trying to maximize how efficient we can. I mean, we know that there's a need for as many parking stalls as we can squeeze into the space. And this is the only way to do it. If we looked at aligning them the other direction and the amount of loss of space from turn lanes and just kind of navigating the site really hindered the parking, I believe like up to about 25–30% loss. So while not ideal and not what we would typically want to be showing, this was the only really orientation that worked. We have to an extent, we're hoping that the sidewalk on the west side gets utilized to access the building. But for the people on the east side of that parking lot, you're absolutely right. There's just gonna have to navigate through the parking lot. We can go back to the site plan if that would help.
Wait, before you go,
Sure.
this is the revised entry that we talked about before, in the middle of the second row?
I don't believe the architect that put this particular exhibit together had the latest base file when they did this section layout. So this is not the up-to-date base.
I guess what's wrong with this? Other than it's not up to date.
It was the fire lane, and then the proximity, trying to get to the ADA accessibility was a part of it too. The site grading just creates constraints, and trying to make the ADA grading work appropriately was a challenge.
All these are all wrong too.
So is your parking lot slanted or is it flat?
It's at approximately a 3% on average from west to east. It lessens at the ADA stalls because they can't exceed that threshold. So it's a lot flatter in front of the building. Having a flat building on a site that falls 9 feet from west to east has been a challenge. So some items that we probably would orient differently have gone back to the drawing board to make things work in a way that was necessary for the site.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I see that notices were provided, and at least as the time of our staff report, we did not receive any comments. Is that correct?
That's correct. The notice, I believe I actually put the dates of all the notices now in the staff report, so I don't have to try to remember them. So yes, we had the legal notice published the 16th of January, notice letters mailed out on the 12th of January, and the sign was posted on the 15th. And even as of today, we haven't received comments outside of the project team.
Could some of those notices have gone to tenants within the new building?
No, we have, they certainly could see the sign driving to and from the parking garage, but we have not noticed the rental tenants. The property owner gets the notice. And we have had certain cases in retail shopping centers where we've sent the retail neighbors a courtesy notice, but in those cases, they can also see the sign.
Okay. And then I note that we have section 18.3 comments with respect to the standards for special use, and section 21.5 standards for a variation of the zoning ordinance, albeit many of them really just candidly parrot the ordinance back at us without really any commentary, but it is part of today's record. Is there anything else you want to add as the petitioner?
No, just appreciate your
Okay.
consideration. Yeah.
Great, thank you. At this juncture, this is a public hearing, and therefore, if anyone from the public wishes to comment with respect to this request, this would be the time. Okay. Hearing none and not being able to convince family members to talk, we can close the public hearing. Is there any other additional discussion by members of the commission?
I just have the general comment, something that Commissioner Cotton sort of started on, and that's, I think the site is overly signed. I see no need for the signage other than the yard house sign on the building. It's their job to do the advertising, not the community's job to put up with the advertising on every side of the building. That's up to them to do as a business.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would much rather see the signage on the building than to have a standalone sign out in the parking lot.
I don't think either are necessary, so I would, in the motion, I would like to take out the signage, or vote on the signage separately.
Could consideration be given to maybe relocating the monument signage if we were to explore that as an option? Only to compare with that of the surroundings, and specifically Perry's, I think, which 2 doors down has the signage. Could we explore that?
I wasn't here for Perry's, so that's my personal preference, is I'd rather see less signage, less obstructions, cleaner view, gains a stall or two.
I've often seen the monument signs, even though you say you're going to maintain it, often seen them obscured by the shrubbery around them, and they become useless.
Okay, so,
And if you're going to have signs on all 4 sides of your building, you really don't need a monument sign as well. People are going to know you're not going to be a drive-by destination. You're going to be a destination they're seeking.
Absolutely, I'm very excited that you're coming to Vernon Hills, actually.
So just procedurally, the options for the signage, right now, they're kind of baked into the motion that describes the variation package. They could be made into a separate motion, and the options for that would be allow that motion, whatever happens with it, to go to the board, or at the discretion of the commission, if the petitioner requests that specific aspect of it be continued, you can leave a public hearing open as long as it's continued to a specific date. So it can either move on with however the vote goes, or there could be a consideration to bring just the signage back. Option number 3 in this case would be to just remove the signage from it and just reapply at a later date. This building is, if everything else were to go smoothly, it's approved, the construction alone could take some time and give them some ability to revise the sign package. So, what is that, 3 options?
But if we look at the sign code variations, which is on the last page of the modified materials from this evening, the zoning code variations we can vote on separately. The sign code variations are really 2. A relates to building signs on the building. B and C relate to the ground-mounted or the monument sign. If we go to A, the manner by which it is calculated, it's not calculated as to number of signs, it's calculated as to square footage.
That's correct. Right now, it's the tagline visible on the same elevation as well as the main oval sign on that elevation.
So that's what we consider as for this number.
That is the total
Okay.
of the signs facing that one direction.
So we could look at it in terms of, I assume that the oval, putting aside the 50% change, if we waive 50%, would be fine in each one? In terms of the
Would it be
code?
code?
Would it be within the code?
Let's see,
Good luck doing the calculation.
On the fly here.
there's my handy dandy calculation on that. The oval is 58.8 by itself, correct? So yes, every elevation, nope, that's not true. It is 50% of 80, so it's 42, it's 84, so 42 maximum, so the 58.8 needs a variation on the extra, so the east and west.
East and west.
Yeah.
So we could vote on, under sign code variation A, we could divide it up into 2 parts. Part 1 would be what we're referring to now as the oval, which is the size change, and part B is whether we would vote yay or nay with respect to what are we calling them now? Taglines, whatever we want to call it. So we could do it kind of separate as a recommendation, then make them come back.
Absolutely, and
Okay.
between, if one of those motions fails, they could certainly adjust
Right.
or make a case to the board.
Okay, so let's do this. As I think some of you may know, we have a standing motion to recommend approval on this commission. Oh, I'm sorry.
So before you do that, I just want to remind the commissioners that there have been other recent petitions like Taco Bell and McDonald's that we did not allow the second sign. So,
Fair enough, okay. So the first is we have a motion to recommend and make findings of fact for approval to amend ordinance 2013-13 as amended to revise the site plan, landscape plan, and architectural plans associated with the Hawthorne Mall PUD to facilitate the construction of a restaurant with outdoor dining for the property at 950 Milwaukee Avenue, Vernon Hills. And that is subject to, or based on, the project narrative by Consolidated Development Services, by the color building elevations and exterior material legend by DP3 Architects, their preliminary engineering drawings, including, I guess it's landscape plan and photometrics by Kimley Horn, and their proposed plant palette, which was received on January 31st. That is pursuant to the conditions of approval that are in the revised packet. And then, in addition, did you take better notes than me?
So what I have right now, the first condition would read, final grading and landscape plans for development, including retaining walls, shall incorporate the plant palette received January 31st, 2024, and be subject to review and approval by the village engineer, ensuring winter coverage in landscape areas.
I thought retaining walls were gone.
The retaining wall, as it's shown on the plan right now, if there's a piece of it that does have to stay, I would like to leave that possibility. I don't want to box the village engineer in. But yeah, the idea is to remove it. Number 2, decorative grasses serving to screen the parking lot shall be cut back in the spring rather than the fall to provide improved headlight coverage through the fall and winter. Number
Is
3,
that what they're proposing?
no, that was from the Perrys.
I know, but what are they proposing? I didn't hear them say decorative grasses anywhere.
It was a consideration. What I heard today that was completed as a full landscape plan included more shrubs than ornamental grasses. I don't know if we want to rule out the possibility that there will be ornamental grasses in certain spots as well.
But you're agreeable to not cutting them down?
I believe so. Yeah, same as Perry's.
So why don't we just say if decorative grasses are used serving blah, 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 and we can say and/or, shrubs consistent with approval by the village landscape architect?
Yeah, that's
Does
appropriate.
that do it? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Want to make sure we get it accurate. Number 3, materials kept within the trash enclosure and walk-in refrigerated storage area shall not exceed the height of the screen wall. With walk-in, the exterior treatment of the walk-in cooler to be provided.
So,
And
let me stop there again. On the screen wall, so then we're saying the screen wall is going to be higher than what it's presented?
no, I think what we're saying is the materials can't exceed the height of the wall. So if they have a baking rack that's 8 feet tall, we're not going to look at baking racks driving down Milwaukee Avenue. The question that I have that still remains is the walk-in cooler itself, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So materials kept within the trash enclosure and the walk-in refrigerated storage area shall not exceed the height of the screen wall, with additional detail required on the exterior treatment of the walk-in cooler and a cap added to the screen wall.
So the walk-in cooler can exceed the height?
Yes, it's 4 or 5 feet above the height of the wall. It's just a matter of whether they need to wrap it with something.
Okay.
Is it going to, well, it sort of looked like it blended into the back of the building from,
And
what
as
they
they
present.
provided in their testimony, they're not entirely sure what that is. So they do need to still
Okay.
tell us what the exterior treatment is. Number 4, the petitioner / mall owner shall ensure that there is adequate signage directing visitors to and from shared parking off of the subject parcel.
Okay, do we want to make that consistent with approval of the pedestrian plan that you were talking about? So like if that plan modifies over time, they're required to update.
Yes, I will note that. Consistent with the comprehensive bike and pedestrian access plan for the mall campus.
And are we looking at the amount of walkways coming from the building on that west side? Whether we need a direct route from the beer garden out to the road? Or whether those walkways are directed towards the crosswalk?
I didn't hear a consensus on that. The response from the petitioner was that that's intended to be an activated space. They don't intend to put landscaping in there, and their preference is to keep that walk. I don't know if the rest of the commission expressed an opinion on that as a whole. I think we had two or three that were concerned.
what are we talking, which one are we talking about?
One
Not
that
sure-
goes to the
not
west.
sure on this.
The one that goes
The
to
one
the
in the
west.
middle?
Yeah, this
Okay.
one. Yep.
My thought is that the space is supposed to be used in conjunction with across the drive as an open space, gathering, special events, then why are we dividing it with a walk right through the middle? And directing people not towards the crosswalk, but further up the drive.
Just as a note on the beer garden layout, if the connection, if you look at the south end, that emergency access point, is there a possibility of the hostess location, the host stand being located in that area?
They were
How-
kind
what's
of
the-
located at the entrance to the,
It's right here.
yeah, they were going to have it at the front door.
But this is
You got to
also-
walk all the way to the front door.
No, see, look, this is the access point.
Like, in order to be seated, that will be done inside. So everyone will ultimately be directed to the front door. But that, I don't think they want to specifically prohibit people entering through the lawn entrance.
There's a pretty big grade differential there too. There's like a little culvert underneath that sidewalk. So I assume that was just to give you a smooth path from the sidewalk to beer garden.
There is a significant grade drop from Mall Drive down to the lawn. The pipe shown on the plan is some yard drains to just make sure that there's not drainage going towards the building. And there are some steps as you come down that path. So it's not meant to be an ADA accessible path, but it is the ADA accessible path is at the parking lot edge. And then this is just a path of convenience, understanding that there is going to be activation in that space and connecting the Mall Drive to the lawn.
All right, so bring up the steps, ADA access. So I gotta ask the question, you gotta lose 6 inches somewhere, right? You'd have to lose, is it 6 inches or 12 inches in the steps?
This way?
It's hard to tell at the scale I have in my eyes.
I think it's 12 inches that we're stepping down, so
It's two steps, so you gotta lose a foot over that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know what his point is, that it's.
All right, what else do we have in terms of?
That was it. So if there's a consensus on how to phrase that, I could certainly add it.
Can't you incorporate it with the overall plan for the campus? Because we're talking about a pedestrian way, I guess I'll call it.
What was your idea on that?
Well, my first concern is,
I know what
is
your
a
concern
separate
is about
walkway
crossing
needed,
the road
right?
there.
Well, first of all, is a separate walkway needed for that space, or can you access it from the main walkway coming off the front of the building?
Yeah.
The second would be, if there is a walkway there, why is it directing pedestrian traffic 50 feet up the road when it could
Right.
angle or somehow divert and direct pedestrians towards the crosswalk?
So you'd want it angled down to the
Maybe come along
southwest?
the fence of the beer garden and then turn and then come up, or
Or
however
just
they
make
want to
this
design it.
emergency exit,
It just, right now, it just divides the space, so it seems like a better solution could be developed.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we make it generally part of the campus pedestrian way plan? And then what we've done before is we've voted on, like, what do we call them? I can't remember what we called them. Not really straw polls, but our. Yeah, polling the commission in terms of that specific element. How about that? And then we can, is that okay?
Yeah, I think from a staff perspective, there are certainly ways, even with again, signage, you know, working that into it. The consideration for safety, I think, is noted. And I'd be comfortable, even if the walk were to remain on consideration for safety, just directing people, you know, I don't want to overclutter this corner with signage, but you could put something near the T intersection there that says, please cross and walk. Just a thought.
And I'd much rather just have the walk direct you right there
right
and
there.
eliminate the sign.
So, okay, so why don't we do it as a poll? And then, the other thing is, I'm not sure how to say it, because you can't in Illinois have an easement with yourself, and it's all owned by the same people. So I assume it's, what I've heard, it's being held by lease provisions. So I'm assuming that we can put that there will be lease provisions that allow for cross-parking allowance from this site to other sites, because if you do sell one of these parcels off, we don't want the person that buys it saying you can't use it, which we saw at the corner of Milwaukee and 60. All right. So that is our motion. We need a second.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion?
I just have overall concerns with this. I think there's some information missing yet. I'm not comfortable with the parking after what we've encountered over at Lazy Dog and Melody Farms in general. The landscaping came in at the last minute, and I'm not sure staff has had sufficient time to look at it. And I think it's way oversigned.
What signs we're going to do separate? So,
Yeah, I
right.
understand.
Okay. Okay, any other comments?
I have a comment about the parking.
Okay.
Formerly being in the restaurant business, and so people travel, they do whatever they can to get to restaurants. You know, like if, I know this is the suburbs, but when you go to the city, they park a mile away, they go, when you're in downtown Libertyville, if you remember Mr. Magoo, I used to cover my face when I looked out, people would just walk across Milwaukee, like in the traffic, like, shoo, like nothing. And of course, so safety is, you know, it's important. But compared to a Melody Farms, it's not going to be as congested as Melody Farms. When you're dealing with Lazy Dog and all those restaurants, you also, you know, there's Nordstrom Rack. When you're dealing with a bunch of all the retail stores as well, I think the parking here is going to be sufficient. And then if it's not, people will go. People don't. I think I overthought it for a little bit. I think they're going to have plenty of parking. They're going to have the outlots. They're going to have the parking lots. People will find a way to park.
People could find a way, but
Right.
they're going to complain about it.
People could find,
Thankfully, not to us. Right?
And if their other establishment had 150 spots, and here we're 20 short of that,
Well, you work with what the best of.
yeah.
I understand what you're saying. However, people do not like walking. They don't want to walk from closer to the mall, you know, here. And I'm very concerned about the parking as well, for that reason.
Do we know if the center parcel is going to get developed in conjunction or around the same time frame, or?
The center parcel is trailing by several months.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was.
So Yard House would open several months before any future?
Yes, that is likely, yep.
I noticed that the Yard House in the Glen, where I frequent often for parking, is just the local parking, and then you guys use the Von Moore parking lot. And it's packed.
So I guess my only thing to say is, how do you get any more efficient on this site? We're already cutting the setbacks back to fit the restaurant in. We're fitting the parking that's there. We've moved the lot sizes with Perry's in this restaurant. You're gonna have this issue no matter who goes here, no matter what it is.
You're right.
So,
Okay. We can do a roll call vote, please.
So we had a motion, a standing motion, seconded by Commissioner Nabbit. Commissioner Nabbit?
Aye.
Commissioner Cotton?
Aye.
Commissioner Fluno?
Aye.
Commissioner Heidner?
No?
Commissioner Leese?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
aye.
And Chairman Morris.
Aye.
And so that motion carries.
Okay. Next, we have the commission making findings of fact and recommending approval to amend ordinance 2013-14 as amended to revise the special use permit for the Hawthorne Mall planned unit development for the property located at 950 Milwaukee Avenue to incorporate the following variances under the zoning code. Section 13.6.1 to reduce the required front setback from 60 to 41.1 feet. Section 13.62 to reduce the required side setback from 35 to 14.2 feet. And section 13.6.4 to reduce the required landscape buffer from 11.82 feet, which was previously reduced in ordinance 2020-17, to 6 feet. As is illustrated on the exhibits provided, the color, building elevations, exterior material, preliminary engineering drawings, and sign package. Okay, we need a second for that.
To be clear, the motion's being seconded. Is the zoning code variation separate?
Separate, yes.
Second.
Okay, any discussion with respect to the zoning code variations?
I just had a question, it's a little off subject, but is this building height-wise about the same as Perry's?
This is a 25-foot. Do you recall the height of Perry's? I think Perry's may actually be taller than 25 feet. Without anything in front of me, I think that Perry's was taller than 25 feet. Is 20 taller.
Right. Any other discussion? If not, we need a roll call.
We have a standing motion, seconded by Commissioner Fluno. Commissioner Fluno?
Aye.
Commissioner Cotton? Aye. Commissioner Heidner?
No?
Commissioner Lees?
Aye.
Commissioner Navitt?
Aye.
And Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
And that motion carries.
I
forgot
say
the chairman.
I say aye too.
Oh, sorry. I had something filled in for you already.
Well, that telepathy stuff. Okay, next we have a motion having made findings of fact and recommending approval to amend the ordinance as aforesaid. We're going to break this up into several areas. A is a sign code variation under section 19.3C6B to waive the 50% reduction for signs on additional frontages in order to permit the maximum allowable sign area on multiple frontages with respect at this point only to what we're affectionately referring to as the ovals.
So I will adjust the numbers.
Yeah.
Essentially, the east elevation, which has a 42 square foot maximum, will need a variation to 58.8.
Right.
The west, which has a 42 square foot maximum, will also be 58.8.
Right.
And the south elevation is, let's see, it has a 57 maximum, so it'll be a very small
Very
variation.
small variation.
Right.
Okay. Okay, any discussion? We're just talking about the ovals now,
So we're excluding any of the text, the standalone text
other than the text in the oval.
in the oval.
Right. Okay, if we have no discussion, how about a roll call?
I'm sorry, I missed the second while I was talking there.
Jerry?
All right. Commissioner Cotton?
Yes.
Commissioner Fluno?
Yes.
Commissioner Heidner?
Yes.
Commissioner Lees?
Yes.
Commissioner Navitt?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
And Chairman Morris?
Yes. Okay, next we have, similar to make findings of fact and recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-14 as amended as aforesaid with respect to a sign code variation to permit the waiver of the 50% reduction for signs on additional frontages through the incorporation of, what are we calling them, taglines?
The taglines.
The taglines. And those are on which of the elevations? Is it all of them?
Well, no,
I'm not
maybe not the east.
Maybe, yeah. I don't think it's the east. I think it's just the,
All but the east.
okay, so it's going to be the, it's going to be on the north elevation,
West.
the west, and the south, right?
Up
No.
the east.
Yeah, all but the east, okay? So we need a second for that.
I'll second again.
Okay, any discussion with respect to that? Okay, we need a roll call for that.
Commissioner Cotton?
No.
Commissioner Fluno?
Yes.
Commissioner Heidner?
No.
Commissioner Lees?
Yes.
Commissioner Navitt?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
And Chairman Morris?
Yes. Okay. Then we're going to move on to making findings of fact and recommending approval to amend ordinance 2013-14 as amended, as aforesaid, with respect to section 19.37B to permit a ground-mounted sign for a business that does not have driveway access on a dedicated street frontage. And can we combine them? Or
Sure.
and that sign under section 19.36C would be permitted to a total area of 84.29 square feet. 50 square feet is the permitted amount. So we're talking now just about the monument sign. So we need a second for that.
Keep your streak going.
Second.
Okay, any discussion with respect to the monument sign?
It's just my opinion that monument signs are overrated. this will be a destination venue, not a drive-by venue. And the sign is in excess of ordinance as presented, and that it will be covered up by shrubbery in no time at all.
Can I ask a question? Have we allowed it for Perry's and for like everywhere else, right?
Perry's, so in terms of the variation that is for a lot that doesn't have direct access from a public street, definitely Perry's.
Taco Bell, McDonald's? They don't?
It had an existing sign that they're refacing.
Right.
Okay, so they
It
have one.
was existing.
But like Melody doesn't have anything for all those.
They have a total sign package that has a few variations in it. There was an add-on later on for the height of the sign on Town Line, but.
But there's no standalone for Lazy Dog or City Works?
I don't believe there is.
It's just a planted buffer.
Yeah.
One additional question on when calculating the size of that sign, are you including the base?
Yes, the base is included in that.
Okay.
The code does say draw a rectangle around the whole thing.
Okay, so even though the base doesn't have any signage, so, okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion with respect to the monument sign? If not, we would like a roll call.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Cotton. Sorry, I'm a little slower when I have to write them all out. Commissioner Heidner,
No,
Commissioner Lees,
Yes.
Commissioner Nabbitt,
Yes.
and Chairman Morris. I lost Commissioner
no, you
Fluno.
lost one.
No.
And Chairman Morris.
No. Okay, then we have, lastly, a poll that is not a vote, that is a recommendation. It's the commission's feelings, if commissions have feelings, with respect to, what are we calling it? The bisecting walkway to the west of the building? I mean, what do you want to call it? Okay.
The secondary walkway from the river.
Well, there's also one on the south, though. That's a tertiary one then.
That's emergency.
They say. There was a north one, too.
Yeah, the north and south seem like emergency, but the one to the west is a little more dominant.
So what we want to do is we want to put a poll as to whether, as depicted on whatever plan we're looking, well, this is the photometric plan, on the plans, whether we are in favor of I guess there's,
Is it more of a as-is or
Right.
needs to be redesigned?
it's as depicted, well, I guess there's three. As depicted, redesigned, or just no. So I guess we have a multiple choice.
Well, I got a question about when we approved this facility in incongruency with the pedestrian bicycle plan
Yeah.
and all that. If the pedestrian plan says people are going to come from a certain direction, wouldn't that necessarily dictate where the sidewalk's going to be? I mean, you're not going to be doing this sidewalk till you're doing your landscape finishes anyway, right? So, I mean, I think there's like time for that to play out, and they have to meet whatever that plan is, right? So I'm assuming the plan will show pedestrian walk paths, shortest distances, and all that kind of stuff. So have we actually already covered this?
We have in part, I think, well, we haven't covered is whether we believe as part of that plan, this should be.
We also don't know the timing on that plan.
That's true, too.
Well, we could say that, well, I mean, you could put it conditionally that, hey, if you want this, your plan's got to be put in at least for an approval to some degree. I mean, I see what you're saying, but looking at the grading plan and the way the grading's set up, if you're going to do that sidewalk, you're going to create essentially a little hill to get down to that
Yeah.
spot. You could do that theoretically, but that's going to,
In that case, is it needed, or do you use the primary walk that's already there along the front of the building that comes out?
I mean, I'd say whatever the overall plan is. I mean, I guess I just don't know how to vote on the three options.
Okay, let me rephrase the options then, maybe. The option one would be as depicted. Option two would be revised, consistent with that plan, and if that plan says that there's not going to be a walkway here, the revision is no. What if we do it like that?
We have two options now.
Yes, right, two. Okay. Revised,
For
or revised,
consistency with the
consistent
master.
with the master plan, right.
Which means it could still stay the same.
It couldn't,
Right,
well, yeah, now you've,
What,
sorry.
but you're
I
right.
mean, realistically, why are we concerned about it? I mean, it's, from what, it's bringing it to the sidewalk.
because people like to walk direct, and they'll walk direct across the road. That's what the concern is.
Well, I guess you got to navigate stairs first. So if
Stairs.
you're of mind that you would navigate two steps, I think you're of mind to know you're ending the sidewalk.
Yeah, there's stairs halfway in.
If you're not of that mind, the proprietor of the restaurant has a problem to begin with.
And that may be
Do we
part
know
of
the
plan.
distance between the, what I guess I'll call the north walk and then the beer garden walk?
It's about this much.
What's right there? 50 feet, 30 feet? So do you need
25
two different walks within 25 feet of each other? Is my point. I'd rather just see more green space.
Guess I see it as more decorative than anything.
Is it all right if I offer just maybe a little history and background on what it is, how it evolved? When we first invited Darden to come see the site, they saw the blank out parcels and nothing else. And the project was well under construction and enjoyed what we were building and what we were bringing to the campus, respected the amount of traffic coming from the mall and then Hawthorne Row Phase 1, which will consist of 48,000 square feet of retail and food and beverage and lots of foot traffic. And what their primary concern was, why isn't this out parcel better connected to your and cohesive with your environment? And out of that came the idea to mimic the lawn space on the other side of the road and then offer customers the ability to get to the store some way, somehow. Don't disagree at all that logistically, does it feel exactly right? Could it be improved? There's probably some tweaking that could be done, but there's a little history as to why it was there. And just knowing that it offers that connectivity to everything going on directly to the west. To do away with it entirely and turn your back on the rest of the Hawthorne Rural project would not be consistent with their initial interest, but we're here to take feedback.
What if you made your south entrance instead of an emergency exit? What if you used that? That leads right to a sidewalk that goes right to the Hawthorne Row.
Shorter walk.
As in lieu of this,
In lieu of this, yes.
I thought that's what we were trying to avoid. Right. Was the safety issue of walking from a sidewalk, crossing a sidewalk, going into the street.
I think what we're trying to do is.
No, he's
if we're-
going at a crosswalk.
Yeah, if they're trying to interact the space across the way, and they're putting a walkway right to it, then they're basically encouraging people to avoid the crosswalk and go right through the,
Street.
yeah. I mean, I could see the walk still coming out the west side of the beer garden, but maybe following along the fence and then turning.
S-shaped meanders
And
down
then
closer to
creating a
the
much larger
corner.
open space. And
It still probably offers in respect, better connectivity to invite customers to walk.
you're still directing people across the street, which I believe is still a very
Yeah. and-
Right.
yeah,
integral
that would be
part of
fine.
the
Yeah.
It's a long
Yeah.
walk.
development across the way.
I think that's something
Yeah.
we would be interested in talking to Yard House and having them consider, as opposed to running the risk of losing that access.
Yeah, and then it opens up the open space for events, and it's not dissected
Right.
like it is now.
So I'm comfortable with the discussion, being able to convey that to the board, and then feedback to the Public Works Department as well. But the idea, we can certainly work with everybody on the project team side. If the redesign does involve a meandering path or a diagonal path, I think that we get the point of trying to connect in the safest way possible.
Okay, so we don't need to poll, we can just present it?
It sounds like that is the direction, is try to design the walk to make this the safest connection possible to the crosswalk.
Okay, let's do that then. Okay. Anything
So
else?
how does that come up in, the board's considering the motion? How does that come up?
I'm going to write it into the staff memo and say that this was a significant discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, what else could we do for you or to you this evening?
So appreciate your time.
Okay, we also appreciate your time, do not misread the comments here to be anything but enthusiasm for this becoming a valued member of the village, because we're looking forward to this kind of development. But our concerns are not with your failure, but with your success creating the issues that we've discussed, and hopefully you can address those. But otherwise, thank you, and this goes to the board.
I have this scheduled for committee of the whole actually next week. We have, just the way the meetings worked out, it's easier for us to draft it immediately and send it for next week's meeting, if you're available.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, next we have the approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2024, with some additions or changes.
Give me 2 seconds to figure out where I put that.
Is that this one?
Hey.
There you go.
Okay, we did receive a couple of corrections, so before the motion is made, I just want to make sure everybody understands what those corrections were. There's a correction on page 3. The question regarding the cars parking agreement came from Chairman Morris. It was originally listed as Commissioner Heidner. There is a typo about 3/4 of the way down the page. The sentence should read, Mr. Pannery's confirmed that it would. It's referring to the loading dock remaining. He said that Mr. Wild would store the trailer for his band in the dock. Moving ahead to the discussion of the motion on page 5. There was a confusing sentence that I have rephrased. That sentence now reads, Chairman Morris suggested phrasing the condition such that the landlord and petitioner must provide the village a written explanation of how the parking would be shared. And under development review, typo, missing the tree from Dollar Tree. And then I had another Chairman Morris comment at the end there regarding Chili's that I had attributed to Commissioner Heidner. So I think that is it.
Okay. So we have a standing motion to approve. Need a second for the minutes as revised? Can we do that by acclamation? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, those are passed. Any development review this evening?
My development review for this evening is just a discussion of next meeting dates. I have 2 petitions in the hopper that are ready for publication. I had a meeting date handout for everybody somewhere. Ooh, there it is. And I think it's easier to just take a moment.
Oh.
Meeting date handout.
Just hand, do it like that. Take one, pass it down.
So, in terms of meeting the minimum legal notice, I think we are probably at February 28th. So February 21st is now out as a not being able to make the publication deadline, or certainly a stretch. We could do it if absolutely necessary, but February 28th. We had Commissioner Nabbit as a question mark at the time the poll went out.
And I can't do it on the 28th now. I don't know if I'll be back in town.
Still a question mark. And I had Commissioner Lees as a question mark on the 28th. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How does March 6th look for everybody?
I can do the 6th. Yeah.
That look okay? So,
Yep.
so that looks better.
Okay.
Correct.
Mhm.
So just in the event that the 21st does work out, so I'll give them the 6th,
21st, you said?
the 21st of February. So we have a 15-day absolute minimum legal notice requirement. So theoretically, it can be done if somebody's ready to go. One of the two is actually ready enough. They're the Anton Parr industrial building out on Hickory Hill. It is a, it's, standalone office, research and development style building. Minimal variations. So it is. In Corporate Woods, yeah. There's a parking lot, an unused parking lot on Hickory Hill that's owned by the property management. It's not for any particular building.
Okay.
So the 21st, so I've got the 6th as a possibility, and it looks like the 21st would be a possibility. The 28th, I had a no and a question mark, so it's sort of getting into that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess all three of those are
Do you want to keep
possible.
going?
No, I think for these
For
two
this-
petitions,
okay.
that 3 dates is good.
Right.
Okay. So none of those dates is an absolute no. The 21st and the 6th are better.
Okay. And that's development review?
Well, the Dick's Warehouse has closed, so I have yet to see the permit, but that is the first step of the process.
Okay. All right. Anything else, anybody? Okay. Now we have a motion to adjourn. We need a second.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? If not, we can do it by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We're adjourned. Good night.
Do you want us to respond by email to these dates?
I got this. I'll